Good evening, and welcome to the Whiskey Wednesday edition. Now, normally we talk about leadership. Today, we have a special guest, Mitchell Gerber, who has spent 20 years on the front lines as an activist and a reporter, researching and uncovering some atrocities to humans. And that's organ harvesting that's going on in China. As usual for Whiskey Wednesday, our co-host is the ninja Dr. Jason Pittman. I'm your host, Dr. Dan Ford, and this is EchelonOrchid.
Guess who's back?
Mitch, Ninja, normally I would say cheers, but, this is not that kind of a show tonight. But Mitchell, I really appreciate you coming on. I've done a lot of research on this topic of human organ trafficking in China, and the missus and I were in San Francisco not too long ago, and we got a pamphlet talking exactly about this very topic. And it's disturbing that if you have enough money, even if you needed a heart transplant, it's $150,000. You've got a heart transplant. And and I was reading on the site that you had talked about, stoporganharvesting.org, and I was just shocked at you have Dr. Kaplan, who's the director of medical ethics at NYU, and he says if you're going to go to China and you're going to get a liver transplant during the 3 weeks that you were there, that means that someone is going to schedule an execution.
Yeah, this is a new form of evil. Thank you for allowing me to come on your show. It's been a pleasure and an honor, because not many of the mainstream media will allow for this truth to be exposed and revealed. But yeah, Dan, Jason, I've been involved in this issue since 2001 when I was studying international business at the University of Georgia. I'm an American citizen, South African born, American raised, at least 25 years of my life in Atlanta, Georgia, where the FBI, the CDC, and Coca-Cola are headquartered, a very strategic position and state in the Union of the United States. So most of my work was done there. And on a fateful day of 2001, I came across this innocent spiritual movement when I was studying business. My father invested a lot in me, and I was very stressed out. I was very anxious. I was doing a lot of work. I was the president of this, the president of that, etc., etc. I was so gung-ho making money, about to intern at a very big investment firm. And one day, guys, I was at a human rights fair, a festival in the famous Athens, Georgia town where big bands have come out of. And I was looking to the right of me, and my friend said to me, "What is that about?" And I was very intrigued with yoga and Tai Chi and martial arts and health and fitness, and something that caught my eye, I walked up to, and I saw these ancient movements, or these Chinese people practicing these beautiful movements of slow exercises that looked like a meditation. So I was very intrigued. So I walked up, I wanted to try. I felt incredibly good after practicing these exercises, namely Falun Gong, which I came to learn what became the largest spiritual movement in all of China. 1 out of every 13 national citizens were practicing this, Dan and Jason, outnumbering the number of people in the Communist Party by 30 million people. More than half of upper-class society were practicing. All of the high-ranking officials in China were practicing these exercises and following more of a philosophy of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. So I was like, wow, I'm amazed. I feel great. I've just done a couple of exercises, and I've never felt so good in my life so quickly. Stress relieved, anxiety relieved. I felt my energy channels just open up, the congestion free now. My blood, I could sleep better at that night. I could breathe better. Anyway, to cut a long story short, when I came back after practicing and learning the exercises, I see this billboard on the right-hand side that quickly just completely let all my bliss and all my positive energy out the window. And I was like, what is going on this side? Stop the brutal persecution and horrendous torture. And I saw all these torture methods, and I'm like, wait a minute, you want to talk about a good, beautiful practice, but then you show me all these torture methods. But lo and behold, I realized that this practice, this spiritual movement, with others as well, has been brutally persecuted in China, and they've been killed for their organs. Basically, the Chinese Communist Party declared war on this spiritual movement, labeling it as a CIA-backed cult, a terrorist group, only to turn public opinion against them, just like the Nazis did in Nazi Germany, to send hundreds and thousands of innocent Falun Gong, Uyghur Muslims, house Christians, and Tibetans to state-mandated hospitals, cutting out their organs while alive, and then selling their organs as the healthiest organs to fuel a multi-billion-dollar business. And this has been going on for the last 20 years.
You know, so Mitchell, one of the things that I was reading was, I can't remember, it was like the 1950s or something like that. You know, China wasn't even, in the top 50 places of destinations to go and get an organ transplant. Today, they're the number 2 destination to, if you needed to get an organ transplant, to go. I mean, even if you didn't want to believe that that they're necessarily getting them from just, criminals that were executed, the math just doesn't add up to me.
Exactly. There is no other regime on the face of the earth, Dan, Jason, and folks who are listening, that are created or has created a kill to order, state-sanctioned, state-mandated, and state-endorsed live organ harvesting genocide, basically killing innocent people, hundreds and thousands, rounding them up under the guard of the Chinese military, investing at least 1/4 of China's gross domestic profit for the last 20 years, involving the secret police, all the economic, social, and political classes, the doctors, turning them into murderers, funding a 254 labor camp system called the Laogai system after they banned the spiritual movement of Falun Gong in 1999, creating an office, a Gestapo-type office, 1 month before the complete forbiddance and ban and crackdown of Falun Gong, labeling it as a complete terrorist group and an outlaw group completely in China, and basically demonizing it, declaring war on it, and then killing it for its organs. And there's no other regime on the face of the earth. This is not like a kidney in the bathtub story. The second group that we can consider doing something on a large scale like this is ISIS in the Middle East. But no, there's no other regime on the face of the earth that has used its own military, turned its own doctors into murderers, used millions and millions of dollars to demonize their own citizens, hundreds and thousands, 1 out of every 13 Chinese national citizens, between 70 and 100 million people, Dan. By 1998, when this practice mushroomed to become the largest spiritual movement in all of China, and now are killing them for their organs. The evidence is clear, irrefutable, and confirmed. There's no denying this, and this is about to be exposed. And when it does, it's going to soul stir people.
So I have a quick question. I don't think there's any room for debate that China has a long history of human rights abuse. I mean, at least in my experience in my lifetime, going back to Tibet and what they've done in that area.
Correct. Yes.
They certainly view, and this goes back to medieval China, right? Where there's sects or factions of Chinese that suddenly become not Chinese by the dominant regime. All right. So China has a long history of this, in my opinion, and I don't think that's debatable. In your opinion, because I'm really curious on what you think about this, when do you think the Communist Party flipped that switch from this is just genocide to now it's genocide to power this financial machine based on organ harvesting?
That's a great question, Jay. To understand how this organ harvesting can take place, you have to understand that there is no limit to how far the Chinese Communist Party will go to wipe out something or someone. Their history of killing 100 million people wiped out ever since Mao Zedong took over, backed by the Rockefellers, because the globalists love the Chinese communist style system. They love it because it is such a perfect way to manipulate, deceive, and terrorize people in order to control them. The divine land of China, 5,000 years, it had incredible divine culture, traditional values, ancient wisdom that was decimated intentionally by the Chinese Communist Party. And when the Chinese Communist Party, like many regimes and many dictators and many empires in history, conquered, what's different to those regimes compared to the Chinese Communist Party is that those empires and evil dictators killed in order to conquer. the Chinese Communist Party conquered in order to kill. Their history of killing, genocide, mass slaughter, cannibalism, starvation under Mao, genocide like this that we've never seen under Jiang Zemin, who was the former president of China in 1999, who first declared war on the spiritual practice, and then President Xi now reducing the populations by millions in the Uyghur Muslim community, in the Tibetan community, as you just mentioned. So the ancient Chinese law has been violated because in ancient China, in medieval China, in the dynasties, even up to this point, very similar to the Rastaman, like Bob Marley, he died because he would not allow the doctors to amputate his body or amputate anything from his body. This is similar to the comparison of the law that Chinese people live in their culture, that the body needs to remain intact from life to death. But what the Chinese Communist Party has done, because it's an imposter, has violated that law and has killed and ransacked and torn apart the bodies without any consent while alive, while the blood is still flowing. Just a little sedation to hold them down so 4 soldiers won't have to do the job, and then just extract everything, kill them for their organs like lobsters in a tank, and then burn the bodies to conceal the evidence, or send the bodies off embalmed, okay, to the body worlds and the body exhibitions. I'm not sure if you've heard about these things, that they're big exhibitions, and kill them too, and then cover them up with cybersecurity and a huge firewall. And I'm sure this is your expertise with AI and cybersecurity and a firewall as big as the Echelon project. It's kind of interesting how your show is basically EchelonOrchid. But the Echelon project, I'm sure you know, is one of the biggest firewalls ever to be in existence. Operation Golden Shield was a firewall that was initiated by the tech companies who are working now with the Chinese Communist Party, Google and Yahoo and Microsystems and Cisco Systems, selling routers to target Falun Gong practitioners, just like they do in Iran as well, to censor and to weed out any dissident that is exposing this evil. So I know that's kind of far from your question. I just wanted to branch out a little bit. But if you would like to play clip 1, Dan, about what's going on, I think it will give you more of an eye-opening account of what's happening.
Absolutely. Here it comes.
First crimes in history began taking place in hospitals throughout the country as organ transplants suddenly began to skyrocket.
We've been asked to investigate allegations that there has been harvesting of organs of Falun Gong in China. Our bottom line conclusion, after considering everything as best we could, was that the allegations are true.
I began conducting comprehensive interviews with medical professionals, Chinese law enforcement personnel, and over 50 refugees from the Laogai system. But I estimate that 65,000 Falun Gong were murdered for their organs from 2000 to 2008.
Essentially what organ harvesting means is they're taking Falun Gong practitioners literally like cattle, holding them in prison camps, testing their blood and other vital organs, and when someone comes into the country that needs a heart, a liver, a kidney, they find a match, they take the Falun Gong practitioner, extract their organs, of course killing them in the process.
People who are expecting this to sort of just be solved naturally by all we have to do is sit back and they'll fix it, this is wrong. The West has to take a role. And the one role the West can do is say, these are our values. We cannot go beyond this. There are certain lines we can't cross. This is a red line. That's an absolute red line.
Enver Tohti, the surgeon turned bus driver, says it's been 20 years since he removed the organs from that live prisoner. There remains a mystery why so few people have ever heard about the thing he says he cannot forget.
This is my experience. This is a real, true story. If you keep silence, this tragedy will continue. And people, they just don't want to touch this evil. Because if you touch this evil, maybe at the end of the day, you may not be able to tackle this, the consequences. That is my guess.
Wow. So I didn't let Jason see any of these clips ahead of time. So I'm curious, Jason,
Well, so I'll say
gut
this.
reaction.
Yeah, and so Dan had asked if I wanted to watch these clips beforehand, and I said no because I wanted to view this and have a raw reaction to it. I'll start with this. Lest anybody think this is completely preposterous, this is my honest, transparent reaction to this. China has an inarguable history of vast human rights abuse. I don't know how anybody could say differently unless they're under the sway of the Communist Party, which we know happens. Point two, we know the Communist Party has a vested interest in massive amounts of technology. And so you see this even in the current day with disinformation campaigns, for instance, on Reddit, which is a popular site if nobody's familiar with it. It's a very communist Chinese approach to controlling propaganda, or controlling through propaganda, I should say. And if you want any evidence of what that party as an organism is capable of, look how they treat animals. And so it's been well understood how China for a long time has pursued shark fin, fishing. And one of the most poignant examples for me comes from how they deal with bears and drawing the bile out and having that port open as an open wound while the animal's alive. And so I don't know that it's a vast step to say that somehow the Communist Party has figured out how to escalate that into this human trafficking based or human genocide based organ factory. I don't know what else to call it, right? I mean, I would have to think that if I was in that place, that's how I would view it. It's a factory, it's a business. It's despicable, it's evil. There's no doubt in my mind, but I have to imagine that's if there was a bunch of Chinese dudes sitting around in a room thinking, hey, wait a minute, how can we like turn this into a business? This is what you would conclude based on. Now, I have firsthand experienced this, how the Chinese will view themselves. And so here's a quick anecdotal story. Prior company I worked at, I worked with two Chinese. One was mainland from Shanghai. The other one was from Hong Kong. And they got into a heated debate one day about who was actually really Chinese. Like this is dynastic, or even this goes back to how the Egyptian pharaohs had divine right to rewrite history at will, right? It's the same to me concept, but just now written in flesh rather than stone. Yeah, man, dude, if that doesn't sober you up, I don't know what the fuck does.
Yeah, and if I may add to your point, Jay, is that there's a great publication called from the Epoch Times, an editorial series, and really good newspaper that's really skyrocketed in popularity. They released a publication in 2004, I believe, November 18th, 2004. And it's on their website. You can watch it, view it, or read it. It's called How the Spectre of Communism has Been Ruling Our World. And yes, the Chinese Communist Party has infiltrated into the West, into all the government agencies. They run the United Nations. They are colluding with the World Health Organization. And it's insane to me how you are having United Nations and World Health Organizations and governing institutions that are supposed to be for the people, but yet are run by a tyrannical reign of terror and are harvesting their own people, culling out their organs while alive. And the world knows full well about this. I mean, the investigators, David Kilgour, David Matas, Ethan Gutman, who you just saw in the clip, and we can go ahead and run the second clip after this if you'd like, Dan. They have come out with 52 pieces of evidence. They've gone over 40 different countries. Ethan Gutman, the bald-headed American guy that you saw, he's done a 10-year investigation and wrote his book and published his book, The Slaughter. And there was, I pulled up the interview from a reporter that asked him, what was your reaction when you heard of the reports of organ harvesting? Well, he said, skeptical. I'm always skeptical when I'm on the threshold of a new investigation. What changed your mind? The Kilgour Matas Report. Now, this is a report that was published in 2006 with 18 hardcore pieces of evidence by David Kilgour and David Matas. David Kilgour is a former Canadian Parliament member and cabinet minister of the Canadian Parliament, Secretary of State of the Asian Affairs Department, as well as a Crown prosecutor. And David Matas is an 35-year international human rights lawyer who first confirmed the allegations that between 2000 and 2006, between 45,000 and 65,000 innocent Falun Gong practitioners were harvested for their organs. And so this is, a new form of evil. Now we've all heard about the Uyghur Muslims. It's coming out that at least 1 to 2 million have been re-educated in concentration camps, and president Joe Biden is in bed with the Chinese Communist Party because he refuses to acknowledge that this is going on, and that he says it's just a normal culture. It's a cultured norm. It's just a normal way of life. Killing millions of people is a normal way of life and a normal cultured norm that the Chinese Communist Party is allowed to go for. So there's been very little exposure from the governing bodies, from the medical associations. Only 4 countries, Israel, Taiwan, Spain, and Italy, have come forward to ban organ tourism, which is extremely disappointing given the number of countries in the world. The United Nations hasn't said much. The World Health Organization has denied it because they've all been run by the Chinese Communist Party. And in fact, the Chinese Communist Party controls 4 specialized units of the United Nations, an unheard amount of power by a regime that is harvesting their organs and has been confirmed by it. So I don't know, Dan, if you have anything to add to that, but you can play the second clip, which I think will give rise to an incredible eyesight, Jason, into what is going on even more.
Yeah, I'll play that clip.
So the question becomes, how has China become the number 2 transplant country in the world?
The place where every other country in the world gets its organs, not available to them. Where are these organs coming from?
Every day there are a dozen of people that are executed or killed for organs in China.
This is run by the state. This was murder, and it came from the state.
Yeah, state organs is certainly an accurate title for what happens to organ pillaging in China. It's done by the state, for the state, to the benefit of participants. And the secondary goal in it, not the primary goal, is to get rid of so-called enemies of the party, the Falun Gong practitioners. The numbers grew so quickly from 92 to 99, 70 to 100 million by the government's own estimates.
Its values, truth, compassion, and forbearance, were out of sync with those of the Communist Party. So, as you know, Jiang Zemin, the president of the country, head of the party, labeled it a cult and commenced a brutal persecution against its practitioners from mid-1999 to the present day.
Falun Gong values are quite real, and they're quite attractive. They actually represent the whole side of China, which has been completely suppressed for many years. It's a side of China that most Westerners never see.
Official line in terms of repression of Falun Gong of the party is bankrupt them financially, ruin their reputations, destroy them physically. So that the vilification is destroying their reputations, the organ transplants is destroying them physically. There's the physical examinations, the blood testing, the organ examination, which have no other explanation than suitability for a transplant. That they had this endless supply of organs available on demand, and the only limit was capacity. And so what you saw after 2001 was this huge building boom. New beds, new wings, new hospitals focused on transplants. And so that the volume, is when the system's operating at capacity, increased year by year.
I guess that paints a picture to you.
So, Ninja, what do you got? What are you thinking there?
Well, so I'm to be fair, I was listening to that while I was looking at some data and doing some overlays real quick, and this is what I found. All right, so I'm listening to that and I'm thinking about the conversation in the first clip we watched, and I looked at 2 things. I looked at the number of kidney transplants by tens of thousands in China. This is the Chinese data; it's their own data. Okay. So keep in mind that, if you're going to report data to the world, you have an interest in reporting the best version of it, not necessarily what's real. Okay. That's just biased data. And then I looked at their population trend on top of that. And this is peculiar. I don't know what you've found, Mitchell, or if you've seen anything like this, or if you've thought about this, but this is peculiar to me. Their population has declined in the same time period. I'm taking a snapshot from 1997 to 2004, because it's the center of the data. So population goes down, which doesn't surprise me because Dan, you've heard me talk about the impending population collapse rather than the population growth worldwide. I mean, Japan's a case example of that, but okay, so this follows that. So how does your population drop 0.5% annually when you're in excess of 1 billion people, but your kidney transplants, just kidneys, quadruples in the same time span?
Yeah, absolutely.
0.5% per annum, but your kidney transplants are quadrupling in the same time period. Like that, those should not diverge that way.
That's a great point. And may I add to your point that the Chinese Communist Party has been saying that, yeah, we are harvesting organs, but only 10,000 prisoners of criminal prisoners in our prison system. But that doesn't make sense. Like you said, the numbers don't add up because the prison population is infected by HIV, hepatitis, which cripples the organs. These people drink a lot, smoke a lot, do a lot of drugs. So the organs are really tampered with and are really bad. So where are they getting all these organs from? And a more shocking depiction of what you're saying, demand for organs and an expanded recipient pool. Where are these organs being sold? Well, China has 130 million hepatitis B carriers. China also has 40 to 50% of the world's liver cancer patients. In addition to over half the world's new liver cancer patients, about 350,000 cases per year. For the 8 million end-stage liver patients, including those of liver failure, cirrhosis, and liver cancer, what do you think the most effective treatment is? Transplantation. So the numbers, I was actually on an interview with Dr. Enver Tohti and Professor Sadiq. Professor Sadiq is an investigator of Uyghur Muslims genocide. And Dr. Enver Tohti was a Muslim, a Uyghur Muslim, but he then converted to, I think, Christianity, I believe. But anyway, he was a up and coming surgeon in 1995, and he was forced to do an organ harvesting. And now he goes around the world, and sometimes he comes with me to briefings, that, as I did in a child trafficking court in London about a year ago, and they were talking about how they are absolutely reducing populations. So how are these numbers adding up and making any sense? Anything that the Chinese Communist Party is putting out there is complete propaganda. They don't even want to, and when you confront them with the facts, they say nothing and they ban you. And that's what happened with me. I've been banned on all the social media. I've been given death threats. I've been involved in an assassination attempt. I'm on the front lines of Vietnam, 100 miles away from the Chinese border. Specifically came to expose this evil, but our offices got shut down. We were forced into hiding because of safety measures, and yeah, the deluge of propaganda, demonizing Falun Gong, covering up this evil genocide, using the World Health Organization, the United Nations, the governing bodies, world leaders to cover this up even further is shocking to me. So yeah, just to add to your point, yeah, it just doesn't make sense. The numbers don't add up.
Yeah, they definitely don't add up. Go ahead, Jason.
And I was just going to say, look, and again, I did not watch these clips beforehand. I'm just reacting raw to it. And as I was listening to it, as a scientist, I just want to pull up the data and look at it. And I'm looking at the World Bank population data. That's factual. And I'm looking at China's best reported numbers for their own liver transplants over time. I mean, like, if it doesn't add up, it doesn't add up, dude. Like, I don't get it. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah. So, this doesn't surprise me, and of course, so Mitchell, Jason and I both have a doctorate in computer science, right? So we're both, we know how to research, right? And so yes. We didn't just go to not that necessarily some of the news sites may not have something valid, but like when you go to Google Scholar, which does have maybe some not necessarily great places, but it's got a lot of publications from around the world that are talking about this, even from the forensics aspect. Like they can trace this back to, these are Muslims, these are people from this parts of China. They're not the prisoners like people are thinking. The world has been, at least the report they get is, oh, this is, they're executing criminals and the criminals but I'm going, this doesn't add up. I really believe, and Mitchell, you're right there on the front line. It's, to me, if you worship anything other than the Chinese Communist Party, you are at risk. And that includes Falun Gong, the Christians that are there, the Muslims that are there. They're all worshiping something that's not the Chinese Communist Party.
Let me jump in real quick because I just want to make a quick point and see what you guys think about this. Because forget this bigger picture for a second. I'm not cool with executing criminals and harvesting their organs either.
Oh, 100% true. Yeah,
I have a fucking problem with that to begin with. So I don't buy the argument that that's what they're doing, because that in of itself is evil. What the evil we're talking about seems to be just on a much grander scale, right? That's my take on that. So
absolutely. And just to add to that, if you go to stoporganharvesting.org, and they've done incredible jobs to expose this evil and back the claims up, because even the investigators have shared to me, we've got to be very careful on the numbers, because this is such a hard to believe topic. And that even the United Nations and human rights leaders, according to Matthew Robinson, who is an award-winning journalist, who first wrote an article about one hospital, proving that it's impossible for these numbers not to be skyrocketed, and that organ harvesting is not occurring on a large scale compared to what the Chinese Communist Party is saying. He did an article about the increase of hospital wards, hospital beds, and hospitals in general, not to mention the Laogao system that was this huge explosion of labor camps. When the Falun Gong, the spiritual movement, was completely banned in 1999, a huge explosion of over 200 labor camps, death camps, detention centers, hospitals, to fuel what? So they admitted to a lesser crime. Basically, the Chinese regime's transition from categorical denial of the widespread use of organs from death row inmates to a high-profile admission took place as serious charges. And these were being brought forth, procuring organs from living Falun Gong practitioners. How can people believe today the Chinese regime's denial of these serious new charges any more than its previous denial of using organs from executed inmates? So using China's public record, for example, here is a simple math. Executed prisoners accounted for major organ source. This is before 2007, even as high as over 90%. Only about 130 people in China signed up to donate their organs between 2003 to 2009. The number of death row inmates has decreased since 1999. Since 2000, there was a big boom of organ transplants from nowhere to become the world, as you said, #2 transplant nation without any volunteer donation and sharing system in place. So where did all these organs come from? That's why the investigators, gentlemen, came in on the scene in 2006, were asked to do independent investigative reports. We're not working for anybody. We're not paid by anybody. Had no special biases to Falun Gong or Uyghur Muslims. Did it completely on their own volition, and came up confirming that between 2000 and 2006, 45,000 to 65,000 Falun Gong practitioners were confirmed they were killed for their organs. Then Ethan Gutman joined the forces, wrote his book after a 10-year investigation called The Slaughter, confirming that between 80 to 100,000 transplantation murders were occurring each year, and that the numbers and the absolute propaganda and lying nature of the Communist Party was just being smashed to pieces. So, yeah, I don't know if you want to play clip 3, Dan, about the European Parliament and the UN exposing this.
Yeah, I definitely will. I just want to. There was something that, as you were talking, as I was listening to that, so Jason and I did a show, a few weeks ago, and we were talking about Carl Jung and the shadow. And for all those people that don't believe that, these evils could exist, and that, how this came about is, could I be a guard at Auschwitz? And I'm going, well, if I grew up in Nazi Germany and I didn't have the Christian-like family that I had, I could possibly be an Auschwitz guard, because I wouldn't have had the same things growing up. If people that say, oh, that could never happen, look at China today. Those atrocities are happening today. And I just, that's what came to mind as I was seeing this.
Sorry.
I was
just going to say, sorry, Mitchell, real quick. To this day, as of today, I think just this week there was a new report about the so-called re-education camps with the Uyghur Muslims. So it's not fantasy. There clearly are those camps, right? And so I don't think it's a big leap to look at some of these other data points and interpolate that and make the conclusion. I don't think that's a reach, to be honest.
Absolutely. And if I may add, like you said, people can't believe it. It's so hard to believe. Even 60 years ago, for example, when Felix Frankfurter, a US Supreme Court judge of the Jewish faith, heard that the Nazis were slaughtering Jewish people in the concentration camps, his first reaction, like many, was, I can't believe this is true. When Matthew Robinson, the investigative journalist, shared this with the high-ranking officials of human rights groups, they were like, oh, that issue, is that really going on? Is that really, really going on? So what you have is all this evidence of a crime that is being committed by the second largest superpower that has the second largest economy in the world, the second largest military in the world, the largest population in the world, that is covering it up and using political influence and economic influence and infiltrating of the West of their spy networks. Yeah, and there are millions of spies, 1.95 million to be exact, a database that was leaked by The Australian, the largest newspaper in Australia, showing all the spies' birth certificates and personal identities, exposing them as spies that are infiltrated into the United Nations and AstraZeneca and Pfizer and HSBC Bank and and Boeing. And you can't believe, I mean, multinational corporations, brand names, technology companies. I mean, Google is in bed with the Chinese Communist Party. You're seeing a massive banning and censorship of truth seekers and people who just want to share the truth on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Their algorithms, I mean, as computer scientists, you can see how communistic and terrorizing these algorithms are. They basically become algorithms for tyranny, all based on the communist-style system of terror and communism in general. So I really hope these people would wake up and stand on the right side of destiny, but it's been 20 years now. So that's why, gentlemen, I take my hat off to you for allowing me to come on and expose this and stand up against this brutality, Dan and Jason. Again, I appreciate really being on your show.
Hey, well, you're more than welcome, but Jason and I are just two computer nerds that are here in the United States. We're not on the front lines, risking our life. So it's the least we could do.
Well, you better brush up on your cybersecurity, because I have a feeling, and I'm not surprised if the CCP are going to hack the hell out of you.
Well, wouldn't be the first time.
Watch out now, they're coming for you.
My clearance was compromised in 2015 by the CCP, so I get it. All right, let's get clip 3 here going. Here we go.
There are no human rights in China, and the most outrageous example of no human rights in China is killing a peaceful community of Falun Gong practitioners and Uyghurs, who are Muslims, and Tibetan Buddhists and Christians, house Christians, for their organs, kidneys, livers, and so on, and then selling the organs to wealthy Chinese or foreigners, and the people are killed in the process.
The belief that I have, and I share with David Kilgour, that organ harvesting is widespread in China, and it is restricted almost exclusively to Falun Gong practitioners. The Falun Gong are to the Chinese regime of today what the Jews were to the Nazis during the war. And we should all take note of this and look at China with new eyes.
There's no evidence that Falun Gong is a cult of any sort. There's no evidence of political action to try and bring down the Chinese government. There's no evidence of anything other than a deep desire to be left alone to practice their spiritual beliefs in peace and to not be locked up and murdered.
David and I have met Falun Gong practitioners in probably 50 countries.
Or even more, maybe.
Okay. All walks of life, all ages, all backgrounds, all education. I've found them to be a wonderful group of people.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't disagree with any of that. I mean, Falun Gong, first of all, it's not even an organization, because it's a set of exercises with a spiritual foundation. Everything's on the internet. You don't pay anything. You don't sign up to anything. You can start whenever you want. You can stop whenever you want. You don't even have to tell anybody you're doing it. Their principles are very simple and ethical. And I mean, all of that is true.
new form of evil that has existed, and thanks to you and people who are involved, I mean, I really take my hat off. I know it's not many people can do a lot, but I think, you know, just learning about it, trying the exercises, signing a petition, and sharing the information with your families and friends and your colleagues, at least the pen is more mightier than the sword, as Shakespeare used to say.
So Mitchell, you know, I gotta ask, you know, these are people you've never met for the most part, you know, that you're going out there, you're risking everything. Why?
To fail to support the good, Dan, and to fail to expose evil is unacceptable. I had a great life. Thank God, I had a great life. I was destined for some very powerful positions, money, fame, woman, you know it. I mean, you name it. But I gave everything up because there was something inside me that triggered an intuition that I had to do something. And then I felt that what is a man who cannot make the world a better place? So my family thought I was crazy. My loved ones were like very concerned about me. My people saw me going from this lively, energetic business person that was all good with the woman and blah, blah, blah. I mean, I was 21 at the time. I was a playboy. I was loving money and partying and this and that. I was the life of the party. And then they saw this person, and then overnight, it changed to a person who was like, I'm giving all this up. I've got to, you know, go on this spiritual crusade. And they thought it was crazy because people don't understand the life when you live it. They don't understand until you really live it, until you're really on the scene, until you really walk the walk, until you really have to be semi-homeless, living behind couches and, you know, almost begging for food, and being banished by your loved ones because they don't understand, to now trying to get on talk shows for no money, no fame, no recognition, just to expose the truth. It's a sense of duty that I really can't explain it until you really have to live it. And the best answer to your question, Dan, is I cannot tolerate rude behavior. When there are people suffering, my heart has to be there in any way, shape, or form. I haven't got an army behind me. I haven't got money and rich donors behind me and corporations or titles. I mean, listen, I'm pretty much a nobody in terms of titles and doctorates, and I didn't even graduate school, for God's sake. I dropped out. But there's a heart inside my body, inside my chest, that beats every day to try and do the right thing, and that's what I did. And I went on my mission, took it upon myself, a one-man army, to expose this genocide and fight against the Red Dragon. And I haven't given up, even though I have been crucified and banished and labeled as some kind of sicko by doing this. But I won't give up.
Yeah, well, my hat's off to you. I mean, if I was wearing a hat right now, you'd definitely be getting a hat tip. So I got to ask, what has been the scariest moment of your life thus far, and with all of these investigations that you've been doing? I mean, it can't be easy.
No, it's not easy. It's extremely difficult. You know, it's very easy to go back to a life of fortune and fame and business, but when you're dealing with something so evil like this, you're not many people would do it. It's extremely arduous and hard. I'm not sure how I've survived after all these years. Yet, like I said, to really face this kind of evil, you have to have a strong mindset, a ferocious character, and a fearless nature about you. And it's not for the faint-hearted. But again, I am grateful. I can sleep well at night looking myself in the mirror knowing that I've done something great and something good and something noble. But your question again was, forgive me, I get carried away with the
No, what's the scariest moment that you've had?
My death threat. I received a death threat in 2005 by the Chinese Communist Party, and they threatened me. I was involved in an assassination attempt. They've broken into my car. The spies have infiltrated my network. They've closed down my office. They've sent spies off to get me. So me sitting down with the FBI, it wasn't really much a fear of my life, but what really made me frightened is how they would threaten Falun Gong practitioners. They literally, a Beijing official shared with me that they'll kill more Falun Gong practitioners if I continue doing my efforts. And I said, look, I'm not against the Chinese government. I'm not against China, but I am against the Chinese Communist Party brutally persecuting innocent prisoners of conscience, and they should not do this. So they came after me, and that was, I think, the most fearful in 2005. Not for my life, because whether I live or die is not the issue. I can die tomorrow knowing that I've done something grand and noble and good, even if it's just a little thing. But I feared the lives of other practitioners, Falun Gong and others, who were being killed and murdered. And that's what gripped me the most and caused major concern to me.
I wish I had some better words. I mean, my
Well,
it's a crazy path.
Yeah.
Well, Dan and I talk a lot about like archetypes, right? And what you're describing, you even used the term red dragon. That is the classic archetypical hero's journey. It's the call to action, as it were. And I think you would agree with the idea that the only true evil in the world is the indifference of good men.
Correct.
And I think what people have to realize when they're listening to this is nobody has to agree with you. Somebody could disagree with the numbers and choose to disbelieve what you're saying. What you can't disbelieve is the passion in which you're trying to solve what you perceive to be evil. And that is, by definition, the call to hero's journey. And so, I listen to that. I watch these clips. I'm looking at the data. And, man, it makes me want to ask you, how do I help, even if it's just sharing this information, which is going to happen. And so we had said this in the pre-show. I have access as an academic to a non-trivial amount of students that are looking for projects to do. And so we've been talking about over time, there's the concept of like Doctors Without Borders, where physicians will donate their time pro bono, travel the world to help solve different health crises. There's Engineers Without Borders, and engineers go around and they figure out how to like dig wells for the pygmies in the Congo, food distribution and stuff like that. Computer scientists, which is my world, are looking for problems to solve. And I'm very curious to think about how, because for me, I classify this as a broader human trafficking issue. Do you have any thoughts on how somebody in my shoes, whether it's me or my students or people that are interested, could get involved to help try and solve this problem?
It's an incredible question. Break through the cyber wall of China to get more information out, but it's already been done. It's already been done as well, Jason. I think the problem is that we're up against. This is the battle between good and evil, basically. And what we're up against are massive tech giants colluding, confirmed collusion, demonic collusion, red devil collusion, bent on destroying humanity with the Chinese Communist Party. I mean, there's no hiding it. I mean, Google is in bed with the Chinese Communist Party, Cisco Systems, Microsoft, Yahoo. They love evil. YouTube, Facebook, the algorithms are all aligned with the Chinese Communist Party. And we have had, it's interesting because when the Operation Golden Shield was initiated, this huge cyber war that was created with the Chinese Communist Party and the tech companies to conceal all the information going inside and outside of China, the Chinese people inside, the Chinese computer scientists in China who were Falun Gong practitioners, who were seeing their loved ones, their colleagues, just people in general being shipped to labor camps, to mobile execution vans. They had to do something. So what they did is they banded together and they created secret technology entities to break through, using the technologies to break through the cyber warfare, the cyber wall. And this technology is actually used today by governments around the world. So, yes, if you have platforms and you have students that can get this information out, share the links and share the websites. I don't know how we can do it, but if you can break through the algorithmic censorship and firewalls of the red dragon or the red devil and its minions to clarify the truth and to show the truth about this, that would be great. I don't know how you would do that. Like I said, I've taken it on myself to just basically walk a 1,000-mile journey with no money, no education, no titles, very little support. And I've tried to do what I could, make a little bit of a dent in the world, but it's very difficult. But all I say to people who are listening, read the information, maybe sign a petition, because the pen is more mighty than the sword. It's like signing a will, or signing a mortgage statement, or signing a banknote. Signing a petition is basically supporting good causes and standing on the right side of destiny. But again, Jason, I would appreciate anything that you and your students could do to oppose this. What you can do is maybe in class show the documentary Hard to Believe. This is where a lot of the clips that I'm showing you come from. Hard to Believe is a free documentary on YouTube that was released by Swoop Films, an 18 award-winning documentary. The famous Peabody Award has also been given to it. Hard to Believe, 54-minute documentary, and then maybe get some ideas from that going forward and how you can do something in the technological realm in exposing this evil.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, this is wow. It's just the more and more I read into this, that's just the anger I get. And for those that I've been popping up and putting in the comments some original research that has been done through peer-reviewed, what Jason and I would consider scholarly research. And Mitchell has also provided me with a bunch of other links that I'm going to put into the show notes as well. I guess, we don't have too much more time, but we've got a couple other clips here. Let me go ahead and get clip number 4 out here, and let's get some reactions here from Jason and you, Mitchell, as well.
Yeah, this is Anastasia Lin. This is the badass beauty queen.
No, that's the next one.
Okay.
Mr. Vice President, the Durban Declaration affirms the urgent need to prevent, combat, and eliminate all forms of trafficking in persons, including organ trafficking. China Tribunal, a People's Tribunal chaired by Sir Geoffrey Nice, considered all available evidence and concluded that forced organ harvesting from prisoners of conscience, including the religious and ethnic minorities of Falun Gong and Uyghurs, had been committed for years throughout China on a significant scale, and that it continues today. This involves hundreds of thousands of victims. Acting on independent legal advice, the tribunal concluded that commission of crimes against humanity against Falun Gong and Uyghurs had proved beyond reasonable doubt, victim for victim, and death for death, cutting out the hearts and other organs from living, blameless, harmless, peaceable people constitutes one of the worst mass atrocities of this century. Organ transplantation to save life is a scientific and social triumph, but killing the donor is criminal. Government and international bodies must do their duty not only in regard to the possible charge of genocide, but also in regard to crimes against humanity, which the tribunal does not consider to be less heinous. It is the legal obligation of UN member states and the duty of this Council to address this criminal conduct. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Wow. So, my first overall in looking at this is why, to me, at least in my opinion, when I hear UN, this is where we get into those, the security states. Like China has veto power over everything. So does the United States, so does Russia, the United Kingdom. Like at a certain point in time, the rest of these countries have got to stand up and go, wait a minute, how can you be considered this world power and do these atrocities? Like you can't be in both sides of the house here, or both sides of the fence.
Exactly.
That makes me wonder that sometimes we get tunnel vision and we think, oh, the goal is to take down the dragon, and maybe that's not the answer. Maybe the answer is to arm all the peasants.
Yeah.
Right. And so maybe the answer isn't trying to do something with or against China or the Chinese people, getting information out or whatever. I'm sitting here listening to that and I'm thinking exactly that. It's, what took down Nazi Germany? It was the Allies, right? It was a coalition of parties interested in stopping evil on a scale that to that point wasn't experienced in the modern world. Man, I really got to think about this, dude. That's a
Well, I mean, think about what was the Japanese admiral who said the reason why he did not continue onto the West Coast is because behind every blade of glass, an American has a gun.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah.
So arming the peasants.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, and that's why we do our best to expose this evil and allow people to know what is going on. And I think the biggest change is coming from within China, because there's a movement called Quit the CCP, the Dang movement, which was established in 2004, I believe, or even earlier, when the 9 commentaries on the Communist Party was published. This is a great publication, as I shared to you before, from the Epoch Times out of New York, how the specter of communism is ruling our world. I really hope you guys can pull it up and show. I'm not sure if you can, but you can put it up on the website and share with your viewers and listeners. It's a great publication. And I just wanted to share with you that also from the World Health Organization, that from October 19th to December 2nd, 2018, the WOIPFG, which is the World Organization to Investigate the Persecution of Falun Gong, conducted a series of phone investigations on some key hospitals and their presidents or directors which have been involved in the CCP's live organ harvesting from Falun Gong practitioners. And the investigation indicates that these hospitals and doctors have not stopped, and they continue harvesting organs from living Falun Gong practitioners. The 17 telephone investigations published in this report involve 12 hospitals in major cities of 11 provinces of central direct controlled municipalities, including Beijing, Shanghai, and others. And the individuals investigated are all presidents or directors of top-level organ transplant hospitals in China. Many are responsible for state-level projects in the field of organ transplantation, as well as national and provincial level technical experts. And what's even more shocking, guys, is that you're talking about governing bodies. Wang Jiefu, who is the former vice minister of health of the Chinese Communist Party and a liver surgeon who oversaw forced organ harvesting of Falun Gong practitioners, sits on the World Health Organization's board council. And when the investigators went to the World Health Organization and the United Nations, the lady chair and the council just turned their backs, denied the evidence, refuted the evidence. And this is insane. Even the Secretary General of the World Health Organization, Tedros, is a puppet to the Chinese Communist Party, has been bribed, has been manipulated, has been paid off to keep quiet and stay silent. And Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting, DAFOH.org, a band of doctors, have created a petition, one of the largest in history, between 3 to 4 million signatures, urging the United Nations to do something, and they remain silent. So they actually retracted or took off and ended in protest, and to prove that the United Nations and expose the United Nations' silence on this. Because who controls 4 specialized units more than any other country in the world of the United Nations? The same regime that's harvesting the organs, the Chinese Communist Party. It's very sick.
Yeah, wow. Let me play this beauty queen clip here.
Yeah, before you do, Dan, I just would like to preface that Anastasia Lin is a Falun Gong practitioner. She's Miss World Canada 2 times in a row. Tried to go into China to participate in the Miss World there and got denied. And this is the documentary that I think everybody should watch, because this is a courageous woman in itself. But yeah, take a look at the clip.
Wow.
If you tell me 2 years ago I'm going to be facing the situation I'm facing, I wouldn't believe it. It sounds like a movie.
A university student, actress, and human rights activist, Chinese-born Anastasia Lin is taking on yet another challenge.
Millions have been imprisoned, tortured, and sexually assaulted.
Her father was receiving threats as a result of her outspokenness against human rights abuses in China.
It is possible to stand against tyranny. One second, I'm going to take off my braces. China's #1 public enemy still have braces.
She was convinced that she was going to get to go to China and that she was going to have this platform to speak directly to the Chinese people. She finds out that the pageant has been relocated to Sanya, China.
I had to choose between silence and my hope for a better China.
The plan was to pose as a tourist with the camera around my neck, hit record to capture whatever I could.
China does not recognize a second passport. She crosses the border, she is Chinese property.
那么中共肯定是不喜欢这个。I would like to ask India to press for answers.
The more visible a target she may have become, ironically, the more protected she would become.
There's one contestant missing from the event.
This looked like a colossal mess.
What is China doing on the Human Rights Council in UN? My platform, speaking out for freedom of thought in China, was what got me here. And I need to live up to it.
She's going right into the eye of the hurricane.
Her own life is at risk.
You don't need to be Miss World to be able to have the world hear you.
Yeah, great documentary. I would definitely implore people watching it.
Absolutely, you know, and it's the interesting thing to me is it was only last week when President Biden, you know, supposedly, well, actually not supposedly, I watched the clip, you know, he says, hey, I told President Xi that can't do this kind of stuff, and you know, but I can't speak out because, you know, there's their cultural norms. And so, you know, it's not my place to say that, but I'm going, wait a minute, either the United States is going to be the light of the world as we believe. I mean, you were born in South Africa, but, you know, and I believe every country probably wants to, you know, at least maybe not China at this point, but I believe most countries that, you know, they want to be the light of the world. So if you are, and you have the economic and military power that the United States has, why would he kowtow to the president of China? I can't think of any other reason other than he's in their back pocket.
Correct. Exactly. Yeah.
Jason, can you come up with another logical explanation?
Well, yeah, I can actually, because for me, it's really simple. Again, and so this is me just being straightforward, right? I don't have to agree with you. I don't have to think this is happening. What I can say is either you're for evil or you're against evil. And look, man, forget the organ harvesting. Put it aside for a minute, right? Because maybe that's too far for you to imagine as being true. It is indisputable that the Chinese Communist Party has these essentially barbarians the way they view them. Okay, this is the terms that my Chinese friends have used about the Western ex-Mongolian Muslim population, right? The Uyghurs. Like they admit they have them in concentration camps. We went to war over that. Like what the fuck?
Yeah. Absolutely. I want to share something with you, you guys. Yeah, just to add to your point. Ethan Gutman, one of the investigators, was asked as well, what do you say to those people who still doubt that organ harvesting has occurred or is occurring on a large scale in China, especially through the use of Falun Gong practitioners? And he mentioned, the slaughter has been out for a year. That's my book. That's plenty of time for serious reviewers to question my conclusions. I can't think of one who has. Even the South China Morning Post, which obviously had to give a critical review given their financial relationship with the mainland, didn't dare. And I stand by every footnote, every interview. I don't begrudge anyone the right to doubt. As I say in my book, these are serious allegations, toxic allegations. But no one has the right to dismiss the allegations without actually reading the corpus of work that has been published. The slaughter, bloody harvest, and state organs, not to mention all the investigative reports that have been authored by the Epoch Times, the World Organization to Investigate the Persecution of Falun Gong, Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting, and EndTransplantAbuse.org. This investigation started in 2006. Yet the volume of investigative work is only increasing. You want to comment? Hit the books. If someone is too lazy to read about the subject or just doesn't care enough about China's atrocities to bother, perhaps they should keep silent.
Well said.
Yeah.
Mitchell, cheers to you, our new friend. I salute you for all the work that you're doing. Anything you would like to close with before we end tonight's show?
Please, everybody, share the websites, share the links. I would love, Dan, if you can come, and Jason can come on your show again and bring in Vitotti, who is the main campaigner of forced organ harvesting, the doctor that actually exposed this forced organ harvesting by actually sharing his testimony that he did one. But there's a great saying. Yeah, I would love to come on your show, and any time you want me back, I'll bring him on with me.
Absolutely.
Sure. And then there's a saying from a great, one of my favorite movies, Kingdom of Heaven, which is, be without fear in the face of your enemies. Be brave and upright that God may love thee. Speak the truth always, even if it leads to your death. Safeguard the helpless and do no wrong, because that is your oath. That's from one of the movies. And also from Gladiator, what we do in life echoes
in the eternity.
Yes. So it's so important. So thank you, guys, and thanks for everybody who's listening. Even if I have touched one person today by sharing this information. Oh, and by the way, try the exercises. Try the Falun Gong exercises. There's the journey that it will take you through. This website that I'm about to share with you is very well put together. It tells you what Falun Gong is, and really gets into the ancient root of this beautiful spiritual movement that took China by storm and became the life force of China in terms of health and spiritual wellness, which I guess basically everyone needs nowadays, especially in the stress filled world that we're living in, especially in the lockdowns, as well as why it has been persecuted in detail, all the evidence laid out clearly and precisely, and then the organ harvesting genocide. And this website is called faluninfo.net, faluninfo.net. So, gentlemen, with that said, thank you so much, and everybody listening. And I appreciate coming on and having you and allowing me to share about this.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again, Mitchell. Everyone, have a good evening. Please support the cause the best way you can. Take care, everyone.
Hey, and if you disagree with it, look into it harder.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Jason, please share with your students and have them watch the Hard to Believe documentary. I think they will bring a great awareness on an idea spurning in the mind to do something technologically to expose this more.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
well,
everybody.
Stay safe, Mitchell. Stay safe, everyone. Take care.
Cheers,
Take
everybody.
care. Cheers.